So why bother with platforms if we're all going to be replaced with AI and out of jobs very soon anyway? What's the impact of AI on all of this?
I'll just start with a simple blurb, and then I would like to hear from Nic and Sean too on this one. If you really go look at social media, LinkedIn, Medium, anything that you want to read, it's all about all these fancy tools, LLMs being able to replace everything that humans are doing, engineers are doing. But the interesting thing is that the whole integration of LLMs and agentic AI into platform engineering is focused on the same old things that we have been focusing on for a while. Accelerating your repetitive tasks, essentially reducing your operational burden. Number two, enhancing that developer experience. And then providing those intelligent insights to be able to do things right. So those fundamental principles have not changed. Those remain the same. Absolutely it can. Every company that we know, including the ones that we all work with, we all are building all these kinds of tools that can actually enhance observability and diagnostics and ticket categorization and everything that goes along with it. As a whole, there is this value AI can bring in to improve how we do platform engineering, but there is nothing in there that says that platform engineering is not needed or is going to be replaced.
Does every tech company need a platform today?
I wouldn't say everybody needs it, but everybody would eventually need it if it's a successful business. But as you start scaling, that is where you really need your platforms. So one of the ways in which we are talking about this whole thing in the book is platform engineering helps you scale your DevOps process. Because this is far more than CI/CD, because I think, Miko, you mentioned this earlier. How does it tie in with the developer experience?
Got it. So if I were to summarize this for Instagram, that would be, yes, you need platform unless your company sucks. And even then, you need to have a platform in spirit.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it, yeah.
Okay, which brings me neatly to the money shot, guys. So why bother with platforms if we're all going to be replaced with AI and out of jobs very soon anyway? What's the impact of AI on all of this? Today, not one guest, but three, the co-authors of the Effective Platform Engineering book, fresh off the press with Manning. I am pleased to welcome to the show Ajay, Platform Metrics CEO and co-founder, Nic from ThoughtWorks, the principal consultant, and Sean Alvarez from Brilio, the CTO of Life Sciences Businesses. And now you can tell me all the things that I said wrong about that. Come say hi, guys.
Hello. Yeah, good to be here. But I didn't have nearly as many things to add after it, so you got
many hats. Okay. So, guys, let's start directly with the book. This is the reason I heard about you, and personally, very close to home. Why would you write a book? What were the motivations?
All right, let me start here. All four of us, you see only three of us here, but we have Brian Oliver also part of our list of authors. All of us used to work in the same team at ThoughtWorks. I'm sure most of you have heard of ThoughtWorks. So as part of working as part of the platform engineering team at ThoughtWorks, one of the challenges that we saw every day working with the clients was that there were a lot of anti-patterns that were being practiced by pretty much everybody, where we were actually learning what those anti-patterns were and how to actually fix that. So we thought it would be a phenomenal opportunity for us to come together and put our experience together and come up with something that is truly transformational when it comes to not only teaching people what platform engineering is, but going one more step beyond that. That's about what are the right things to do within platform engineering, and more importantly, what are things that you shouldn't do. So that was the motivation that we had from our end.
I'd add to it too. In the course of doing exactly that and working with clients as they attempted to achieve these outcomes, we also found things that we used repeatedly and maybe in a different sort of client, in a different sort of outcome. But we found that a lot of the product thinking, the things that we build to people that were trying to get in front of customers for business-driven reasons and values that they were good at measuring, they often weren't as good at doing that internally. And we found that those same strategies would work really effectively internally to those same sorts of business value measured outcomes. And when we started doing that, and we had some learnings and failings and successes along the way, but we honed in on a set of things that really delivered value. And I think that goes, Ajay, like you say, is let's record that and capture it and try to multiply it.
What's platform?
The definition?
I would say that the platform is a reusable set of patterns and practices that you can put in place to ease the onboarding of its usage, ease the day-to-day workflow of the developers using it, and increase their effectiveness and efficiency by providing the guardrails that the organization needs so that all the cross-functional teams get the benefit of knowing that anything that is being built and deployed and pushed out to a production environment is going to meet their needs as well, really just improving the organization's engineering function as a whole.
Gee, it's almost like you had the answer ready there. You thought about it, didn't you?
Well, a couple times.
How is it different from like developer experience?
The way we think about it is that platform engineering enables developer experience. So developer experience comes from, I think Nic talked about it a little bit, measuring the value of how the developers are actually doing their work. It's not always about the productivity measurement, which is always tougher, but it's always about the overall experience that they have. So platform engineering enables developer experience. It is not a replacement for developer experience or vice versa, but it provides the right kind of capabilities for the developers to be able to do their things much easier and faster.
Got it.
There's a Venn diagram there. There's an overlap, meaning somebody says developer experience. They might be and could well be talking about a few things that aren't at the forefront when you're building a platform, but they're all part of that same experience pattern because developers need a variety of things that we associate with engineering platforms. That's part of their experience of doing their job, how they get infrastructure, how they create ingress into their apps, how do they observe it and operate it and manage it. Those are all developer experience, as well as how do they get access to code level libraries and tools and things that you might not normally immediately associate with a platform, but they're all part of it together. So your developer experience improves greatly if there's an engineering platform as part of the measure of what is the developer's experience.
When did we start talking about platform engineering? Is that like a new term? Has it been around for a while?
I have an interesting story. So we were doing this at ThoughtWorks several years back. The name of our team itself was something like digital infrastructure, right? We didn't really call it platform engineering because those were the days people were really struggling to name what we are really trying to do, which is trying to create those capabilities or abstract out the capabilities of what a DevOps team would do or a developers would do from the point of view of those repeated activities to actually improve the infrastructure, define the infrastructure and improve it and all that. So we went through a transformation there at ThoughtWorks. This was probably around 8-9 years back or something like that, where we literally changed the name of our team, started calling ourselves platform engineering as that whole definition was coming together. But the differentiation was, so as we all know, when people started using the term DevOps maybe around 15 years back or something like that. Around that time, there is this whole anti-pattern with respect to teams being called as DevOps. That happens even today. The problem with that is that sort of reduces the overall productivity by developers not being empowered to do the kind of things, but developers would actually build the product code and then they will throw it over the wall to somebody else to build and deploy stuff. So when that transformation started happening, people started thinking, so what do we call that? And that's where developers became consumers of capability so that they were self-serving their whole set of activities, what we call as the DevOps. So that's how that platform engineering term sort of came about. But we have been talking about this term now close to a decade, probably a little bit less. At ThoughtWorks, we created this team around 2018, 2019, or something like that.
Would you say that the meteoric rise of cloud and I don't want to say Kubernetes, but Kubernetes also contributed to that a lot of these things became platformable more than before?
I would say that it's a combination of Kubernetes and infrastructure as code. Those were the two big things that enabled automation to the degree that you could call it a platform. Before that, you'd see things like observability platform, right? It's my platform that all my metrics go into and all my dashboards go into. And then you might have a IAM platform, which is something where I can quickly provision out credentials to access things. But a true engineering platform really was the result of infrastructure as code being able to quickly deploy new things across environments and infrastructures. And then Kubernetes providing that runtime platform that's very extensible to not only deploy things into Kubernetes, but also use it as a management plane across other parts of your infrastructure as well.
You know, the rise of software as a service things, you could say cloud, people were competing and coming in with products and suddenly something boring. You could say like GitHub, people found that, wait, you can deliver something as fundamental to your work and a user experience that's completely independent. You don't get on the phone with people from GitHub to do work. It just works. And expectations changed. And as that grew and cloud options made it even more accessible, internally, that's so valuable. That saves so much time. Why can't we do that here? And like you were saying, Ajay, ThoughtWorks early digital platform strategies weren't targeted directly only at engineering platforms. We were saying the entire business can build its internal services in a way that they can be consumed self-served within the business by people building things, APIs, all of that, and then with the same outcome expectation. This should be just like using that service we use in a cloud context, which is an API. I can have as much as I need whenever I need it, and I'm not opening tickets for people to do work. It's just a tool that I have access to. And so initially we weren't focused only on engineering. It was just platforms as a way of delivering things inside a business. But this is huge impact. It covers the scope of a whole lot of things. So we honed in on it and left the businesses to help figure that out for themselves when they were building their inventory to all these other internal business things that depended upon this kind of platform to work.
The self-service is like a keyword that may be a little bit triggering to some people. And let me explain. I had a conversation with a random person at SRE Day the other day, and they were running a platform team similar to what I'm doing at the moment. And the thing they were discussing was, it's all great when it's self-service until it stops being great when it's self-service, because behind like the simple API or whatever Terraform module, I don't know, example, I want to deploy a Postgres database, right? And it's easy enough to pick up a module off the shelf, but that hides the enormous complexity of actually understanding how to run it on scale. And there's going to be a lot of examples like this where you hide in the complexity and getting started is easy enough, but then you can't necessarily get rid of that complexity entirely. What's your thoughts on that?
There's some interesting things actually included in that question, right? So let me actually try and parse that a little bit. One is, of course, this whole idea of golden paths, right? Anytime we actually talk about platform engineering and the self-service, it's a whole idea of could we actually provide effective golden paths for significant parts of developers to be able to go do that. But together with golden paths come this whole idea of golden cages, right? So that is on the one extreme where you're constraining your developers not to be able to be flexible enough. Then on the other extreme is probably what you're alluding to, where you would have this situation of, I'm still having to learn a whole lot of things. There is still a significant amount of cognitive load for me as a developer to be able to use this platform. So how do you manage both ends of that spectrum? This is where I think we are alluding to this in the book too a little bit. The whole idea of progressive disclosure. It's always about there are different personas who would actually need the abstractions at different levels to be able to do that. As a senior developer, you probably want to have a lot more understanding and control over what your engineering platform can do. Whereas somebody who does not have that level of experience, or somebody who's more of that technical product manager, there is a completely different requirement there. So it's almost always about building in the right kind of escape hatches for any kind of golden paths, but at the same time, making sure that there is this progressive disclosure happening for the different types of users as you're really going through the whole process of using it.
When it evolves too, you say make it easy to get started. It does, but it's not about easy to get started. It's easy to use at the appropriate level where you're at. So because I can deploy a simple custom resource request within my Helm chart and get a database, what goes with that is, and if you have zero use, very lightweight, you're part of a very small domain inside this product, and that's appropriate, there's a self-serve path to automatically do that. If you're porting an application that has 10 terabytes of stuff and scale on these huge things, that doesn't fit your use case. How does an engineering platform meet that? And if that's inside your company as a need, you have that data team, and we say database engineers, but they deliver their services as a product. So there's someone behind an API that can manage all that scaling and growth and needs, not the developer who depends upon that database. And so you deploy things inside the company that meet the need. And understanding that if someone said, there's just a Terraform repo, you deploy an RDS instance, and treated that as that's the whole life cycle of RDS for as long as I needed it. That was the mistake. The mistake wasn't in making it accessible quickly. It was putting it in the hands of people who that was not the tool they needed, or not giving them an evolutionary path to grow as that no longer became suitable if it was to start.
Another example, I think, would be Kubernetes, because nobody gets fired for using Kubernetes these days. Ate the world, and it doesn't surprise anybody. But every time I onboard somebody onto Kubernetes, it's this wide eyes. I said, oh, it was so simple. I wrote some YAML. They don't know there's going to be a lot more YAML later on, usually. But then, eventually they start bumping into this weird kind of edge cases, because underneath you've got the container runtime and you got weird Linux behaviors that they probably didn't know about. And in your view, is that platform's job to teach that stuff as well?
One analogy we use a lot, and just quoting Jackie Stewart, and you don't have to be a racing engineer and be able to build a Formula One car to drive it, but you're a much better racer if you have mechanical sympathy for that car. And I think that's the practice we bring to it, is that you don't want to put Kubernetes, in this instance, inside a black box. No, you make it accelerated to use, but it's there. It's very easy for the developer to go into the hoods. And the expectation is, if they're brand new to Kubernetes or they're brand new to the company, a junior developer, yeah, they're going to have a new person's experience with it, but they should grow and learn in that. Just like if you're focused on Java development and maybe Node with React and whatever, you expected to grow in those skills and become better at it over time. And if you use frameworks or tools that made that you more productive with less knowledge early on, the assumption wasn't that you stay there. The assumption is you continue to grow in that knowledge, and we build the platform in such a way that you never hit some layer that's cut off from you and is black. It's that you're stepping through prepackaged with guardrail things that make it easy to be productive, but also easy for you to, as you learn more, dig under the hood, I'd say, when you need to, and learn more about it, and encourage you to do that. Engineers who are building architectures for systems they don't understand won't ever be as effective as engineers who are. And so we might need to streamline it to get you productive early, but we don't expect you to just stay at one level of knowledge.
Yeah, the double-edged sword here that's hidden underneath all of this is that when we abstract the complexity, we're not just looking to make it easier for the developers to onboard to Kubernetes or whatever the platform may be. We're having them deploy onto Kubernetes because we can control the guardrails that the organization needs for the way this should be deployed, with observability or with secure routing or networking, whatever it may be. And that abstraction serves as a way to get them into that kind of compliant and governed ecosystem without having to understand all of the complexity they need to deploy to it. Now, I say abstract and not hide because, again, just like Nic was talking about, if you need to dig under the covers a little bit because that abstraction is hiding things from you that you need to be able to control, you can now. But I always like the analogy I heard of, we provide you the guardrails, the golden path Ajay mentioned. I can still go off onto the shoulder of the road, right? The paved road only goes out so far. I have a little bit more I need to worry about now. It might be a little bumpier. I might need to know a little bit more to control. I can go off-road if I want to. Now I have even more control, but I need to understand more about what I'm doing. Eventually, I'll still hit guardrails, though, that I can't go past. Right? If I'm on Kubernetes, I can't get into the node level network and start modifying things because we just don't want you to do that. But I can get down as far as I'm allowed to, depending on what I need to be able to do that I couldn't do before by taking advantage of the abstraction.
And only additional thing I would add to this is in the book, one of the things that we are talking about is building an API to be able to handle some of these kinds of things. And the good thing about this API or take an approach like that is anybody who does software understands API. So we take the API and use the same API for activities around whether it is CLI-based interaction with the system or whether it's a UI-based interaction, whether it's a developer portal interaction with the system. The underlying API would remain the same, which again goes back to the point Sean was saying. It's about ensuring that you provide that kind of visibility on demand as the experience of the developers increases and as their own knowledge increases, they are able to go in and peel the layers of that onion and see a lot more about it.
Before you tell me that the answer is go to manning.com and look for effective platform engineering, what does good look like for a platform?
When we talk about platforms, there are a few underlying principles that we always talk about. These underlying principles are fairly simple if you think about at that level. So we are thinking about things like when you're building a platform, you should be building that with the inputs of the developers or inputs of the end users or the consumers. So that is the number one thing with respect to that. If you end up building something thinking that you know best because you've been a developer in the past or you are a developer, I know best as to what developers need, that's not really going to work. So number one thing is making sure that you understand the stakeholders. Number two, building whatever you're building as a product as opposed to just doing some automation. What does that mean? That means that you have some kind of a life cycle for what you're really building, and you're actually applying all the product development principles as part of doing this. Another principle around that is, are you building this platform with the key attributes of replaceability, composability built in there? Meaning, you're not ever going to go out and buy an engineering platform, right? You can buy components of it and plug it into your overall system, but you're never really going to buy one. So like that, you're never really going to build an engineering platform that's just going to remain the way it is all the time. So you need to bring in that composability aspects to that. Fourth principle, making sure that what you're building as a platform has got observability built in. So both Sean and Nic alluded to that a little bit earlier, making sure that anything that is happening within the platform itself is observable, not the other way around. So we're not talking about the application observability, but ensuring that anything that you're doing within the platform is observable. Another thing that we have actually called out within the book is there is actually a chapter where dedicated to this whole idea of what are the various domains that actually are addressed within a platform, should be addressed within a platform. So building a platform has got a lot to do with thinking about it as a domain-driven design, taking that domain-specific approach so that it addresses all the different planes that actually encompasses a platform. And we can go into some of the specifics of what those domains are, but these are the kind of principles that make a platform.
And what does bad look like for a platform?
Delays, opening tickets for other people to do work on your behalf. So I say if you're just saying what from a user's perspective, what does good look like? It's that inside of an enterprise that build a platform, 80% of the development teams, people on those development teams, find that they can do everything they need to in their job every day through the interfaces of this platform by themselves without needing to go outside and ask people to do work on their behalf. Not so much 80% of the time they can do that, meaning 80% of those developers find that it self-serves them into all the things they need. And there's the 20% that are doing things just so different from everybody else and this and that the prioritization of when that became a platform is late. That's what it feels like. And so if you can't do, that's what bad is the inverse of that, meaning all the delays that it takes to get access to 50 different things and dependencies on, I open tickets with them to get code changes in their stuff so I can change my code and all the different, you can just think of all the friction that goes on and typical operational friction, deployment friction, all the rest of it.
Yeah, and it's a subtle nuance because you might think the whole organization's using it. We must have done it well. But that's not always the case because the whole organization's using it. Things are a little better, but the platform team is not actually a platform team. They're an operations team getting tickets all day. They're making it look like it's working well, but it's not. And it's not giving you the value that you need. And again, you want to increase your engineering efficiency. You want to increase your developer experience, and everybody could be using it, but you're not doing that. Again, you're really just functioning as an operations team at that point, trying to keep the lights on and not giving everybody the gains that they were looking for from the beginning.
So would you say that you would measure the success of a platform through the negative amount of time spent handling tickets going forward compared to the previous time?
Tickets is a huge KPI. I always would tell my platform teams, how many support requests do you get for every feature that you release? And if the support requests are too high, you didn't do that feature right. That's absolutely true. The actual success, I think, and this is a lot of where Ajay's business is focused around, is the metrics that you see in your development cycles. Are your deployment cycles going up? Is your cycle time going down? Some of the qualitative metrics of how happy are people with using the platform. It's going to differ a little bit per organization. I know Ajay could certainly talk for weeks about this on end, but it's really those metrics that your particular organization was looking to fix that is going to evaluate if it was truly successful or not.
The cost of delay is very high. And like I said, removing all that friction is huge, and then improving resiliency, the operational resiliency. Like you say, it could be you wrote a better product and that's why you have fewer tickets and support issues. But it also could be it's just more stable and resilient purely from a up-down time kind of thing. And you've taken a really good solution and made it so accessible to so many people that it's not like people are reinventing that solution around the company all the time with varying degrees of success. So the good things are broadly distributed and widely available. And so your overall product health is high, as well as the need for developers to be productive and move friction from their day.
Does every tech company need a platform today?
I wouldn't say everybody needs it, but everybody would eventually need it if it's a successful business. The way to measure, and again, I keep referring back to our book, we have actually decision trees within the book that talks about how do you actually figure out what's the right time to actually go the platform route. Let's take a couple of examples, right? If you are a small startup trying to build your first product, there is probably no absolute need for having a platform to be able to build your product. But you have to really think about the right kind of principles that we are talking about. You want to make sure that anything that you're doing is aligned to the principles that we discussed earlier. But as you start scaling, that is where you really need your platforms. So one of the ways in which we are talking about this whole thing in the book is platform engineering helps you scale your DevOps process. So DevOps is probably okay to get started. You obviously need to build and deploy your product to multiple environments, even for a startup. But once you do that, how do you actually get to that next level of scaling everything? And at that point, you can't really live without that. The other thing to think about it is that the reason why we say it's not a simple definition, which is why you want to look at that decision tree, is this doesn't mean that the startups won't need platform engineering. Startups would need it. Let's take a scenario of startups are actually creating multiple versions of a product. They are deploying it to production all the time on a continuous basis. There are specific situations in which they would need that. But the way we look at it is that any larger enterprise would absolutely have a need for platform engineering to whether they are actually doing a continuous delivery or not. Because this is far more than CI/CD. Because I think, Miko, you mentioned this earlier. How does it tie in with the developer experience? So if you have a set of developers trying to do some work to produce something, you obviously need to have an approach of platform engineering there.
Yeah, it's the platform engineering as a practice, if you will, versus maybe the most mature reflection of having applied that, this engineering platform product internal that's amazing, let's say. Those are two different things, right? One is a set of principles and practices you could apply, and the other is the end state of one particular product. Lots of reasons why a company doesn't need necessarily that end state product if they're not involved deeply in custom software development, all the other reasons. But probably everybody can benefit from platform engineering thinking to highlight and pick up the places where they do experience that kind of friction, even if they don't have the 100% friction because they're not doing 100% of the things. But they do experience heavily in these three areas. There's also that practice element to it where they can apply principles and deal with the issues, even if they don't need, say, that ultimate end state.
Got it. So if I were to summarize this for Instagram, that would be, yes, you need platform unless your company sucks. And even then, you need to have a platform in spirit.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it, yeah.
Okay. Which brings me neatly to the money shot, guys. So why bother with platforms if we're all going to be replaced with AI and out of jobs very soon anyway? What's the impact of AI on all of this?
I'll just start with a simple blurb, and then I would like to hear from Nic and Sean too on this one. If you really go look at social media, LinkedIn, Medium, anything that you want to read, it's all about all these fancy tools, the LLMs being able to replace everything that humans are doing, engineers are doing. But the interesting thing is that the whole integration of LLMs and agentic AI into platform engineering is focused on the same old things that we have been focusing on for a while. What are those things? Accelerating your repetitive tasks, essentially reducing your operation burden. Number two, enhancing that developer experience. And then providing those intelligent insights to be able to do things right. Even before we started talking about all these fancy LLMs of late, we've been trying to solve that problem. So those fundamental principles have not changed. Those remain the same. Now, can AI, especially on the agentic side of things, can that actually help the whole process of moving those three things that I talked about? Absolutely, it can. So this could be like, number one would be that enabler of those platform tasks. When you're doing some particular architectural implementation or some kind of building and some intelligent assistance or something like that, can it be improved? Yeah, it can absolutely be improved. Second thing that we see, there's a prevalence of Gen AI and even agentic AI right now is on the observability and the diagnostic side of things. Every company that we know, including the ones that we all work with, we all are building all these kinds of tools that can actually enhance that observability and diagnostics and ticket categorization and everything that goes along with it. As a whole, there is this value AI can bring in to improve how we do platform engineering, but there is nothing in there that says that platform engineering is not needed or is going to be replaced.
I would boil it down to AI is inherently a probabilistic technology. Platform engineering was really spun up to try to make the process of building and releasing deterministic, right? We can do it in a standard way with efficiency and still allow rapid iteration. Combining the two is really just giving you the same result that we're looking for. I can do rapid prototyping with AI. I can do rapid analysis with AI, but I can still use those platform engineering techniques to make sure that both the humans and the AI are still within the same guardrails, so I get the outcomes that I'm looking for.
Aren't humans non-deterministic as well?
They are, and that's why we need it.
Exactly. Okay.
I'm the one with this quote. I'm not anti-AI, but I'm just saying I think that there's a tremendous amount of hype, and most of the conversations that we have in the public forums are driven by some of the potential fears of it. And that's okay. People should be able to talk about that, of course, but it's the reality I think is very different. And like AI generating code replacing software engineers is like, yeah, if you work with that code that AI generates every day and you realize what the implications are of trying to do that, and then the needs change and it grows and scales, and it writes some of the, if a team of people were hired to produce the results that a team of AI compiled results, they would be in trouble. AI does not perform like humans. It doesn't have actual knowledge. We're using anthropomorphized terms here to talk about what it does. So it's a tool that has some really interesting ways to make people's time more effectively applied or to reduce low-value work. But it's not fundamentally going to change the need for humans in the process. It won't replace ways of getting to value that we all do from these things. So it's just a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, I think, at the moment.
I also want to take a balanced approach here, right? I completely agree with what Nic is saying. At the same time, if you really look at all this plethora of tools out there within this DevOps space that we call as platform engineering tools and all that, each of these tools, or pretty much every tool I know, offers some level of an MCP server to be able to integrate with that. So one of the real benefits that I see is that anybody can create that value far more easily by actually providing that integration using things like MCP servers. So the impact can be very pervasive to get to that same goal that we need to get to, but it doesn't replace that path, which is what Nic was talking about. It doesn't replace the paths how we actually need to get to there. And the metrics remain the same too. So we are still trying to see how can we improve the developer experience, how can we reduce operation costs and things like that.
Okay, I think we can leave AI at that. Thanks for the answer. Now imagine that you're at your grandchild's graduation and they say to you, Grandpa, I really want to be a platform engineer. This is all because of your book I read back in 2025. Please help me. What do you give them as a blueprint, I don't know, 10, 15, whatever years in the future? What do you think is going to still be the same and what's going to be different?
I think for me, the thing that's really going to be the same is using technology to generate business value. That's really what it comes down to. And it could be for the business value of an organization, the business value of somebody's workday across the board. That's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to make things more efficient. We're trying to make it easier to innovate. And that is not going to change the goal. The mechanism by how we get there in terms of, are we using Terraform or are we using some Gen AI model or something, that obviously is going to change. But the overriding goal of what we want to achieve is going to be the same. And it's really how platform engineering has come about to where we are, because it's an iterative build on top of all the techniques we've had to get to this point of DevOps, of you build it, you own it, all these different types of thinking that have led us here to achieve this type of goal.
So while Sean was talking about this, I was thinking about a scenario, right? I have a grandchild at some point, and that grandchild is 5-year-old. She comes to me and says that, Grandpa, I want to be a platform engineer, but I have no idea what this is. So this is probably how I would say that, right? Imagine your friends and you are building some kind of a treehouse. And every time you want to do something in the treehouse, you have to fill up a form. You have to go inside, get your mom's permission, fill up a form, wait for multiple days for mom to run to Home Depot or wherever they actually run to actually build all these things. But imagine a situation where you have a magic tool set, right? You open that box, things come right next to your treehouse to be able to do things. And that opening that magic toolbox also is your job. So that's a self-service part of it, right? It's your job. Your mom isn't going to, dad isn't going to do that. You are actually going to be doing that. That becomes self-service. So the result is, hey, you can actually build your treehouse by tonight instead of having to wait for 5 days for somebody to go around somewhere and get everything. And that is platform engineering.
Gee, I hope that by then this will count as child abuse to threaten them with jury tickets.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Love it. Amazing.
But yeah, I think the path there, I don't think will change much at all, in the sense that there's all this platforms are targeting underlying infrastructure and technologies that software developers work with. It's like diving into those things, understanding exactly how they work, such that you could build them yourself the old-fashioned way without all these tools, as just a metaphor, because it's a broad tool set. I use a paint trip skill set to talk about what it means to do platform engineering. It's not t-shirt, meaning I'm really deep in one and then a little bit shallower in others. It's now pretty deep across the board, and then I have several dips that go down. And if your mind works that way and you like becoming deeply specialized in several things, not right next to each other necessarily, and you do it in this space, there's going to be demand for that all the time. And no matter how much AI we throw at this, it's like the people who will benefit from that and the jobs that will grow is if you're the person who can evaluate the response from the AI and know whether it's true or false, and to be able to get value from it, right? It's going to spit out all this stuff at you, if you will. And the people who understand what the underlying thing well enough that they can get value from that are people who will have success in platform engineering, no matter what the technology of the future is. So it's pursue it the same way we pursued it now. Just know how far you can go without knowing and understanding the underlying things. It is getting shorter, not wider, because there'll be things like AI there that persuade people that you don't need to know it. And that's a problem, right? You still do, because AI doesn't know.
Yeah, AI isn't going to actually teach you how to actually hammer in that nail, right? Because you can get that, but you still need to hammer that in. So that part is what the training is still needed.
When it tells you to hammer the nail right through the power cord, unless you know there's a power cord there, you'll just blindly do it. And it'll tell you that every day. So you got to be aware of that.
All right. So we got a little bit of philosophical, but the book is very down to earth and very practical. And it's actually real. I think I've seen photos of all of you unpacking the books on LinkedIn. How did it feel?
It's a phenomenal thing, because this is something I mentioned somewhere else. And if you really look at, I don't want to date any of us here, right? Or give away the age of all of us. But if you were to collectively look at our experience that has gone into this book, I would say it's closing in on 100 years, right? 100 years of experience among the four of us. I think that's significant amount of mistakes that we have made and we have learned from. And I would probably put that first, because I still make mistakes about some of things I shouldn't be, but all of us do. And then a lot of the learnings that has come out of those 100 years of doing this. So as I'm really unpacking that box and telling people about these things and starting to give away complimentary copies and speaking at conferences where we're going to do some book signing and all that, that's the part that comes to the fore. We probably have something to offer the readers based on our practical experience of having done this.
And the fortune, I consider really blessed to have the opportunity to work with a consultancy like ThoughtWorks, in the sense that it's not just at one place working for this one company, even if you're doing really interesting things where you had a chance to work on it. In a sense, that's very myopic, because there's 10 other people doing somewhat similar things and taking different approaches. And we've had the opportunity to work across all of that in a very, especially on this topic, in a very condensed period of time. So we've been able to learn from the good and the bad that many people have shown or bubbled up to the surface. So that's worth it. You don't have to make those same mistakes yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And just you'd ask, what does it feel like to unpack the book? And it's not often in this field that you produce something that you can hold in your hand and say, this is the result of the work we did. And I think this is one of those rare circumstances where you can say that and other people could take a look at it people that still read physical books. I know there's plenty of them out there, right? Like the smell of it. And if it's something that has all that experience baked into it, then not only can you read and learn from, but go back to it as much as you need, because it's a huge field. There's a huge amount of things that we probably couldn't get in the book because it's evolving so rapidly and there's so many rabbit holes you can go down. So as you do it, you're always going to realize, hey, wait, I thought I saw this in chapter 8 at some point. Let me go back and see what's there. So it's nice to have something that you can go back to so easily like that.
100%. Nothing beats that smell of a book you spent 2 years writing. Congrats, guys. And if it's not too late, maybe go and check with Manning. I think a tagline, 100 years worth of experience building platforms, would actually go a long way. So it's yours for free. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.